Hello and welcome to The Game Changers, the podcast where you'll hear from extraordinary, trailblazing women in sport. I'm Sue Anstis, a founding trustee of the Women's Sport Trust charity and the founder of Fearless Women, a company with a powerful ambition to drive positive change for women's sport. I'm thrilled to say that this series of The Game Changers is supported by Sport England, who have done so much to tackle the inequalities women face across all areas of sport. From the much celebrated This Girl Can campaign and initiatives that help shape school sport for girls, to schemes that encourage more female volunteers in the workforce, support female coaches and officials, and ensure more women, from all backgrounds, take leadership opportunities on the boards of our sports organisations. This week I have the absolute honour of talking to Tracy Edwards MBE, who overcame huge challenges to skipper the first all-female crew in the Whitbread Round the World yacht race. She was also the first woman to receive the Yachtsman of the Year trophy. The story of Tracy and her team is beautifully told in the 2018 documentary Maiden. I started the interview by asking Tracy about her first experience of sailing.
Well, I get really seasick, so it was not a pleasant experience, if I'm totally honest. The first time I guess I ever went sailing was with my dad when I was 8, in a little boat from Hayling Island to the Isle of Wight, and I just threw up the whole time. And I thought, well, that's something I'll never be doing again, sailing. Yeah, that's off my list of things to do. But then, of course, when I got offered a job as a stewardess on this beautiful charter yacht in Greece, to sail around the Mediterranean for the summer, I was like, I'll give this another go. And off we went, and I did spend 2 days. Oh my God! Anyone who gets seasick will understand how just awful it is and debilitating. My favourite saying is, first of all, you're afraid you're going to die, then you're afraid you're not going to die, and it was just something I thought, I'm going to have to overcome it because I want to do this. And for me, it wasn't necessarily an instant love of the sea or sailing or anything like that. It was these amazing people, this group of people that I had ended up with. And we'd all ended up there somehow, none of us had gone through yacht clubs and up through dinghies or anything like that. We just ended up on boats. And for me, it was the people, I felt accepted for the first time, I think, in my whole life at that point, really. Up until that point, my mum was the only person that thought I was capable of, sort of achieving anything. And here was this amazing group of people saying, yes, welcome, come and join us, come and be one of us. And I knew pretty much instantly this is what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I just had to manage the seasickness, which I ended up doing. Then my love of the ocean developed, and my appreciation of, just what I was able to do, it's travel in a whole different way at that age. I was 17 when I got on my first boat. And so, I've got my little cabin with my things, and I feel safe, and I'm traveling, so it was just extraordinary.
And what had taken you to Greece in the first place? How did you come to be there?
My father died when I was 10, and my mother remarried an unfortunate individual. We did not get on, and I never really told my mum when any of the he was quite violent towards me, and I never really told my mum. She had so much to deal with, and I was being bullied at school, and I became when my daughter was born and I realised that my mum loved me more than I will ever love her, I looked at her and went, Mum, I am so sorry for everything I ever did to you. That realisation, I just turned into this awful teenager, and I stole a car, I was arrested, I was drinking, I was jumping out of my bedroom window, not coming home. Oh, I was so angry, rebellious, aggressive, just horrible. And when I finally got expelled from school after being suspended a number of times, I almost judged my headmaster for not expelling me sooner. My mum knew that I was on a road which did not look good. And so, at the age of 16, I cannot believe how brave she was, and actually how much faith she had in me, that she said, I think you should go travelling. So we had a sort of one of those uncles that isn't really an uncle, who lived in Zia Marina in Press. She said, why don't you backpack through Greece, and I ended up getting the magic bus of it in the end, which used to be 4 days, loads of hippies, from the UK all the way through Europe to Greece. And I began, my life traveling. Ended up working in a bar, and that's how I ended up being in this marina and seeing all these beautiful boats, and crew would come in and they'd talk, and I think, wow, this life sounds amazing, and I'm so lucky that everything that happened. It could have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah. And did you have plans at the time, or you were just going to travel?
No plans, no qualifications. I didn't, my mum made an arrangement for me to go in and take my O-levels, and I didn't go in. And I just threw everything back in her face. And I do feel just constantly awful about what I did. And I think that is why I'm so passionate about education now, is because, if I do a talk in a school, there's always some bright spark that says, Miss, you think that you were successful because you were expelled? So all the teachers go, oh. And I always go, no, I was successful despite not having a great education. You cannot beat having a great education. And later on in life, when I actually had to get a real job for a while, I didn't even know how to write a CV, or I had nothing, no substance.
And looking back on those days, I guess you're stewardessing, you say, on those boats. Are there people that you met there that influenced your life later on?
Yes. My first cook, wonderful woman called Janie, who, so Mike Corns, who was the skipper, had come in and said, do you want to do some stewardessing? And I'd be like, yeah, get me out of this bar. So that's how I went for an interview with her, and no experience, God knows what I look like. And she said, later on, something just connected, and I thought, I've got to have this girl on the boat. And she became a huge influence in my life, as did he. And I've been so lucky in my life. Every single one of my skippers has had some influence on me, or mentored me, or pushed me, seen something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And so the second transatlantic I ever did, the skipper looked at me and he said, can you navigate? And I said, of course I can't navigate. I was expelled before long division. Stupid. So he said to me, don't you think you should be able to navigate, do the things that you need to do on a boat to keep yourself safe? I said, well, you navigate. He said, what if I fall over the side? I'm like, oh, there's 2 other guys on the boat. I don't know. And, I was a typical sort of 18-year-old, I don't know. And he said to me, why are you being a bystander in your own life? And it was one of the most profound things anyone had ever said to me, apart from my mum saying to me, every one of us is good at least one thing. I think she had her fingers crossed at that point. And within 2 days, he taught me to navigate. And to me, that was so extraordinary. And it was another piece of proof I needed that maybe I'm not this useless, waste of space, and I can contribute. And the other thing he said to me was, this is your life. You're supposed to be playing the starring role, not a bit part character. Okay, bit profound for 2 days into the Atlantic, but there you go. And literally after 2 days, he said, right, there's everything you need. Take us to Portugal. And I was like, but you're going to be watching what I'm doing. He went, no, we're just going to end up where you take us. And it was one of the most momentous things in my life. And sailing into Villamora was just so amazing. And I still, when I think about it, I still get goosebumps. And I've never lost that. So in 35 years or 40 years of navigating, every time we go into port, I do tend to turn around and go to people, I did that, I did this, I got us here. And everyone's like, yeah, you're the navigator. You're kind of supposed to. But I never lose that thrill.
And how did you move on then from being a stewardess on a yacht charter to actually being crew on one of the Whitbread round the world races?
So life on board these boats you're like a little travelling circus. You do the Med season, and then you do the Caribbean or the Indian Ocean, or whatever. And you kind of all bump into each other at various places. And someone will usually say on a weekend, let's go racing. So, I thought, oh, this sounds fun. And so I would get on various people's boats and go racing. It was the first indication to me, though, that there was such a thing as sexism. I'd never come across that before because I was a stewardess or a cook. So I was where I should be. It was only on racing, and not the cruising racing. That was, we were all allowed to do anything we wanted to do, and usually had a beer in one hand, and so that was not very serious. But the first serious race I did, I realised, oh, okay, I'm not allowed to do various things on this boat. And even learning was hard, so I would sit and watch and do what I was told. And so I just realized two things: that I loved this part of sailing that I'd never really sort of been part of. And I'm really competitive. And I had no idea at that point that there was this thing in me that was really competitive. I couldn't believe how competitive I was. And so I thought, this may be the next thing I'm going to do in sailing. I always thought it may be part-time, And it was I was going out with a guy and sitting on his boat one day in Antigua, and I pulled this book out of his bookshelf, and it said Cape Horn's Port. And I opened it up, and the first page I opened it to is a picture of him standing next to a broken mast on a boat. And I went, what's this? He said, it's the Whitbread Round the World race. I went, this looks amazing. Was it good? He said, that was the best thing I've ever done in my life. So I said, I think maybe I should try this. He said, no, they don't allow girls. We didn't stay girlfriend and boyfriend very long after that. So I just thought, they don't allow girls. What's that all about? Then literally a week later, a yacht sailed into the harbour, and it was a Whitbread boat. And so, I went to see if I could get a cook's job, which I got because it was an amateur crew, and so they were paying to do the race. And so I did the first leg on this boat called North Data, which was the most horrendous experience of my life. I thought we were all going to die. I mean, the skipper was awful. No one knew what they were doing. I was one of the most experienced people on the boat. And that's never a good sign, when you've only been sailing for a few years. So I got off in Cape Town, which was the first stopover, and the cook on Atlantic Privateer fell ill. There was no one else there, so they kind of had to take me. And out of 260 crew in this race, there were 3 girls, and I was one of them. And I was the first girl to race on an ocean racing maxi, so this is the big league, the big boys, the roughy-tufty ocean racers. And I remember so many people saying to me, this is going to be so hard. You're going to find this really difficult. It's so tough. I mean, okay. I mean, they did put me through it, and the hazing and everything else that you have to go through as a girl. But, I dealt with it, and I learned. And in the end, they saw me as their little sister. It was really bad for my dating prospects. I have to tell you, 17 brothers that look like pirates. So in the end, they started teaching me, and I just absorbed, this stuff. And I just got to the end, and I thought, oh my God, that is like just the most fun you can have. And it's not that hard. I mean, if I can do it, I was like, this is such a load of rubbish. It's like just a really well kept secret. Let's tell women this is really hard. So I just thought, I've got to go around again. And I am a lousy cook, but I'm a good navigator. So I want to navigate. I'm not going to cook for a load of guys. But the only way to do that, that I guess my mum always said, this is the second most profound thought I had in my life, was no man is ever going to let me navigate on their boat, ever. It's not going to happen. So she said to me, well, if you don't like the way the world looks, change it. How do I change this? I'm just one tiny little person. So she said, well, why don't you start with yourself and then, see what happens from there. So I thought, okay, I can only start with myself. And that's how Maiden was born.
And no one had ever done that in terms of going out and finding an all-female crew. So why did you feel you could do that at the time?
Oh, the arrogance and the naivety of being 23, whatever it was when I started at 23. Oh, I don't know. Just, I'd never failed at anything, well, apart from school. I didn't understand what failure looked like. And at that age, as we all know, you're often more likely to take risks. I mean, initially, I wanted to put the project together, and I knew I'd have to learn to be a manager, project manager, do PR, raise funds, find a crew, do all of these things. But I was always going to be just a navigator, and I was going to find a skipper. That was always the plan, because you don't go from being cook to skipper on a Whitbread, apparently.
You thought, yeah.
You'd have thought. So, but as I got further and further onto the project, and we had no money, we never had any money, but we collected people. People would arrive on my doorstep, I'm from America, I hear you need an all-female crew. I'm, okay, fine, yep, come in. And we all had 2 or 3 jobs, and we had to sort of do the refit on the second-hand boat because we couldn't afford a new one. So as we were going through the project, my confidence, I was never confident about finding the money. That was always my biggest worry. But my confidence in how I could manage this did grow. And I thought, I I think I can do this. And, I mean, I brought Marie-Claude on, who is this extraordinary French sailor, I mean, with way more experience than any of us. I brought her on really to set her up as the skipper. We had a massive personality clash, and in the end I sacked her, and that's when I thought, I'm just going to have to do this myself. I'm going to be the skipper and the navigator, which is quite unusual to do both. I do have to say, people often ask me what happened to Marie-Claude. Well, she went on to do the next Whitbread on Heineken, which was much better for her, and we're now best friends, and she's now actually looking after Maiden, so we've gone a wonderful full circle with that one. It is lucky, we didn't race around the world together, because we would have killed each other. So the other thing actually interesting, that when Marie-Claude left, it taught me that what we'd done was we built this team in the image of man, which was all we knew. We'd only ever, of course, sailed with men on men's teams. Now, women work differently. So when we removed Marie-Claude, we had this flattened hierarchy and this much more level decision-making process. So I always had the last word. The skipper has to take responsibility, but we wouldn't have much more debate. And so I'm the navigator, and I've got the two watch captains, and we worked out a system which works better for women. So what I would say, out of almost every disadvantage that we had, we learnt how to make it into an advantage, which was a really interesting part of the process. So it kind of just happened that I ended up being the skipper, and that my crew gave me the chance to do that.
You mentioned that you had some huge personal sacrifices financially to raise the money, so you remortgaged your house, etc. Why was it so hard to find sponsorship, do you think?
It is hard to remember 30 years ago how impossible people thought it was for a team of women to sail around the world. People honestly thought we were going to die, especially men that didn't sail. To them, it was such a huge thing for even men to sail around the world. How would women be able to do it? And we had extraordinary responses to the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters we sent out. One of my favourites was, the thought of 12 of my wife sailing around the world fills me with horror. Okay, lucky wife, I thought. Gosh, he's choice. The other one was, if you all die, it's going to be really bad publicity for the company. So that was in a nutshell what we were up against. We had small sponsors, loads of supporters, amazing. The whole of Hamble raised money for us, the village with their entry, even though we weren't allowed in the yacht club because we were women. And we struggled, and then in the end, King Hussein stepped up, and he'd been always in the background the whole way through. And I mean, he was the second person I said that I was going to do this, and he'd said to me, good, you must do this. This is important, and he'd always been encouraging me. And unbeknownst to me also, when my mum died and I was going through my things, she also used to call him and say, I don't know, I'm worried about this, and she's doing that, and she loses her temper all the time, and he'd be like, right, so he was talking both of us through it. What an extraordinary man. And so in the end, we'd got so far, we were months away from being on the start line, and in the end I went to him and I said, can you help? He said, I was going to say, this is just ridiculous, Royal Jordanian Airlines will be your sponsor. And that's how she ended up, that beautiful grey colour with the red and the gold stripe.
And do you think it would be as tough today, 30 years on, for a women's crew to find sponsorship in that way?
It is still as tough. What happened after Maiden was interesting, actually. There was then always a female crew in the race after that, except when they went with the big Volvo 70s, which no one could control strength-wise, men, let alone women. They tipped the balance on a level playing field into not a level playing field. They've gone back to the Volvo 60s now, which we can all sail equally. One of the very few sports, actually, the women can compete on a level playing field. So the next all-female crew kind of came about, and then it kind of happened, and they didn't have enough money, and then there was a mutiny, and then so it was all a bit weird. And then the next all-female crew was a male project that had a second boat. So they practiced on the boat, got their new boat, and thought, what are we going to do with the old boat? Well, let's get a bunch of girls to sail around the world, and then we've got two chances at getting good PR for the sponsor. No new equipment, no money, here you go, girls, off you go. And then, so no one ever did as well as us. No all-female crew has ever done as well as us, because I think the difference is we did it for us. We, right from the very start, The next most successful one was a boat called Team SCA. Now, they had loads of money, time, new boat. The most extraordinary women sailors on the planet were invited, but it was a male management team, and they didn't tell them who the skipper was going to be until 2 months before the start. So they fettered them, before they even got going. They did win one leg, and they're the only other all-female crew to win any legs. So it has not been a happy journey for women sailing in ocean racing. I mean, in other areas of sailing, we've now got 50-50 for the Olympics, which is fantastic. And that's due to the work of some extraordinary men, actually, within sailing, along with us. So it is still very hard to raise funds if you're a woman, not just in sailing, in any sport.
Any business, yes. And you face such negativity from women and men that you have alluded to there. What do you remember at the time about the comments that people were making about you and the crew?
Oh, I mean, shocking, absolutely shocking. And when we watched the film, in 2018, they had a preview in BAFTA and we all went to watch it. And we were going, can you believe we had to put up with this? And none of us really remembered how awful it was. I think we'd just gone, at the time, it's just like, oh, whatever. That's what they think, And so we didn't really, I think, react in a way that I would react today, probably on someone else's behalf. If a young woman was spoken to like that, I'd be up in arms. But no, I mean, Bob Fisher, the Bob Fisher story everyone loves, he called us a tin full of tarts in the Guardian newspaper. It's just extraordinary. But then when we won our second leg coming into New Zealand, the headline for his article was, "I'm putting salt and pepper on my hat as I write this." And then he wrote, "They're not just a tin full of tarts, they're a tin full of smart, fast tarts." And we were ecstatic. And someone went, "You do know the word tarts is still in that sentence." And I'm like, yeah, but baby steps, He was wonderful, Bob. And we changed his mind about women in sailing. And he has been throughout the rest of his journalistic life a huge supporter of women's sailing, to the point that when we rescued Maiden and brought her back a couple of years ago, he was there to welcome her in. And I mean, he was in his best Sunday suit. He said, "I've come to see him, our favourite girl." And he said, "Can I talk to you about girls' education?" I looked at him, I went, "Bob, you have come a long way." And he looked at me, he said, "I had a very good teacher." So, and I think what's happening with what we're doing now is that realisation that it changed so much more than we'd realised. I mean, yes, not enough, we're still fighting the good fight, and I'm still hearing awful things that happen to girls on boats, and within anywhere, media, government, business, we're still unbelievably still trying to get to, total equality. And I do get downheartened sometimes, but then, we get people come and look at the boat and they're like, "You changed my life. This project changed my life. I did this or I did that," or yeah, I mean, it's a great feeling, but we really still have a long way to go.
At the time, you mentioned the likes of the media and Bob not talking to you about competing, but talking about women as a group and so on. But people seem very angry about what you're attempting. Why do you think that was, looking back?
That was the weirdest thing, I knew people were going to go, "I don't think you can do that." Fine, you don't think we can't? We'll prove you wrong. That was easy to deal with, but it was this annoyance, this anger, this, who the hell do you think you are, encroaching on our area? So it was like we'd intruded into the big man shed at the bottom of the garden, the ultimate man shed at the bottom of the garden, and as if in some way our taking part in the race made it less than, and I don't know why. I guess we proved that it's maybe not as roughy-tufty as they would like people to believe, and that if women can do it, people will know, that it's not this, I don't know. It was a very strange experience.
Yeah, but interesting though, isn't it? I think that all the stuff in football, that horrible negativity around women playing and commentating, and it's a similar thing, isn't it? That I'd like to understand where that anger comes from.
It's like the man that argues that equality and feminism makes him less. It's that complete lack of understanding that if we are all equal, we are better, and equality is better for all of us. And I don't understand men with daughters that say things like that. it's as if they're in a separate world. And it's this, I think this just complete lack of understanding that, equality doesn't make you less.
Maybe we'll get there eventually. You did mention before you set off how incredible it was that you were all working on the boat in the yard, literally rebuilding her. Did you all just learn on the job?
Yeah, pretty much. So Jenny so we had electricians on the boat, and no way we could do that, and putting in the nav station and all that sort of stuff. But she was sort of like their apprentice, if you like. So they would get her physically to do the work, so she would learn. And they were great. Oh, they were just wonderful. Paul. And they really made sure that she understood and that we knew, that we could fix anything. Everyone that helped us on that project was just extraordinary. And in the end, we in the yard, because we were such a novelty. People used to actually stare with their mouths open at the fact there were a bunch of women working in the yard. And because I look at the footage now, there's no health and safety. There's no, it makes me go hot and cold now, that what we were doing and using all these tools we had no idea how to use, and, borrowing things. But someone gave us an engine, and then, someone gave us a generator. And, would you like, I've got an old water maker. Would you like? Yeah, absolutely. We'll have that. And some rigging. Yeah, we'll have the old rigging. So it became this really all-inclusive project. And to their credit, the guys also working in the boats in the yard, I think by that point they'd realised they're serious. Yeah, they're pretty serious about doing this. And they did, most of them, step up, and would, give us a hand. But a lot of it, we not made up on the way, but we realised we had skills that we didn't know we had. We realised we'd all learned more than we knew that we knew. And a lot of it was instinctive, so replacing the winches with coffee grinders, which means that you're grinding using a different part of your body. We have different strengths. So really making the boat into a female physical form friendly boat. Oh, that's a good phrase. So
iteration there, yeah.
That we felt comfortable with. And yeah, we fixed everything. When we were at sea, we could do absolutely everything.
Excellent. And so on to the race, and you came third in your class in that first leg to Uruguay.
Third in the first leg.
And people were celebrating your arrival, but you weren't very happy with that place. So why was that?
We were gutted. We were absolutely gutted. And this isn't in the documentary because it didn't flow. But the first race we ever did was a transatlantic called the Route of Discovery, and that was about 6 months before the start of the real race. And there were 11 other Whitbread boats, and we beat all of them. And we came first and second on corrected time. So we were very confident when we started. We thought, we can do this, absolutely. And that race is interesting. Actually, it's been lost in the mist of time.
Yeah.
And of course, because it's not in the documentary now, they've rewritten our narrative, if you like, which is fine. But yeah, so when we came third, we were just so disappointed. And it was so weird, because everyone else was genuinely pleased that we were still alive. They were like, oh my God, you're alive. This is amazing. We're like, we've done really badly. Also interesting to learn that you have a responsibility, the crew. You have to respond to other people's feelings about you. And it's quite weird. You have to accommodate everyone, the whole crowd, so we had to join and go, yes, it's great that we've done it and everything else. But that, we were then we all went away to our hotel and huddled together and went, right, next leg, the next leg is ours. And that's how we set off on the second leg. Determined is an understatement.
And looking at that leg, watching it on the film, it's absolutely bloody terrifying from just viewing it. What is it like to sail in the Southern Ocean in that way?
Sailing in the Southern Ocean is like nothing else. Nothing will prepare you ever for it. People can tell you, about it. And I was the only one that had done the Southern Ocean on the whole crew. And I told them, you just can't describe how awful it is. And even the documentary doesn't really fully. Joe's filming is so extraordinary, and then Alex, the director, said it is Joe's filming that absolutely makes this documentary. You know, on the other boats, it was mostly interviews, you know, with the microphone. That we've got the mains full and the number 2 up, and we're going in this direction at that speed, and that was it. But Joe would film these wonderful little vignettes. I don't know. I can't remember her filming this stuff. I don't know where she was, hidden in a cupboard or something. I don't know. So she does get a sense of that. That weird world that you're living in. You know, you have sensory deprivation. You know, the seas are grey, the sky's grey, you don't see the sun for weeks, and the boat's grey. You enter this strange world of just you. It's just you, and you're aware that there's a fleet of boats out there, and you're always looking out for each other. But it is, you know, you put your head down, and you know you've just got to get to the finish. And I mean, there is great sailing as well. You know, they're hurtling down the waves and going really fast, and that's awesome. We used to play Highway to the Danger Zone from Top Gun, full blast up there, just sailing through these conditions. For us also, and I think Claire says this in the documentary, for us also, it was the realization that we were all capable of so much more than we had believed. And, you know, when a couple of the crew got on the wheel and we looked at them and went, wow, you're hiding your light under a bushel, weren't you? You know, I mean, you're amazing. And so I think we flourished on that leg, and we became the top of what we could achieve. And I mean, obviously you have moments of doubt, but I was convinced we were going to win that leg. And I mean, we did take huge risks. We did discuss the risks beforehand. I mean, our insurance company would be having kittens if they could hear this, but, you know, saying things like, do you think the chances of hitting an iceberg are? Well, I mean, if we were looking for a piece of land, you'd never find it. So I don't think, you know, this is how we did our risk assessment. Oh my God. So we knew we were going to take chances. We knew we were going to go very far south. We knew that was a risk. We were the only crew that went south of the Kerguelen Islands. We took a very different course. And it was the first time in my life I'd had absolutely full confidence in my navigational abilities and allowed myself to believe in myself. And it paid off. And of course, there was a huge tragedy on that leg. One of the guys of one of the other boats lost his life, which was just awful because we all knew each other pretty well. So that was terrible, and a real reminder of where you are, you know, that it's makes you feel very mortal. But of course, then when we finished the second leg and we were in first place, I mean, it was just vindication of every moment of that project. And also, but then the disbelief that everyone had that we'd won, you know, they were like, what? And of course, they thought it was luck. Most people thought it was luck.
And that was, the reason then, not the reason, but you then went on to win that next shorter, more tactical third leg into Auckland. So do you think that was the point at which the public perception really changed when you won that third leg?
Yeah, for us, we had to prove that this wasn't a one-off, and that we could do a short tactical leg as well as a long heavy leg. And I mean, that was an interesting moment for me, because I realised tactics is it's not really my thing. And then of course, you know, I looked at my watch captains and I'm going, well, they're very good at it. So, you know, we realised we had everything we needed at that point. And I mean, it's a short leg, it's 3,400 miles, but, you know, we sailed into New Zealand after having raced Ruckanore down the coast. Oh no, it was Ruckanore or L'Esprit. I can't remember. Anyway, raced, you know, one of them down the coast, literally, and the boat for boat, and then it gets dark, you know, and you're like, oh, where are they? You know, and so when we sailed into New Zealand, we didn't know whether we were first or second. And as we crossed the line, you know, everyone shouted, "You're first, you're first." It's just, yeah, amazing. And that is the moment I think that people went, oh, okay, women can do this.
And how different was it on the boat with women as opposed to the experience you'd had when you'd been on the boat with men? Did it feel like a very different experience? Oh,
goodness, yes. Oh, it's worlds apart. We're not better or worse, you know, men and women. We're different. So for an example, I got on Atlantic Privateer in Cape Town to do the long Southern Ocean leg. And the first thing someone said was, right, let's have a bet to see who can go the longest without washing. So, yeah, I mean, I did come joint first, I have to say. I had to do it. But then the guy that I was joint first with went another 2 days on land. Yeah. So the communication is different. I mean, there would be days on Atlantic Privateer where no one would say a word. And for me, that's torture. You know, there'd be a lot of grunting and nodding and communicate in a very weird way. So that was strange. A lot of much more naked emotion, anger, argument. We were emotional as well, but we never had an argument. I mean, I know people don't believe this, but you can ask any of us. We did not have one argument on the way around. We had a few before we went, putting the right team together, but we didn't argue. We had heated debates about which sails we should have up, because I didn't employ a crew of sheep. You know, we all have very strong opinions. Oh my God, bunch of feisty women. But we were never rude to each other or disrespected each other. There was a real sense of, a huge amount of respect that we had amongst ourselves, but also not just for each other, but for our personal space, for our possessions. The guys on the boat, if they were hot bunking, would just chuck whatever was on the bunk off, before they got in. And we would be like, carefully, because, it's like the biggest crime in the world is to get someone else's socks wet. I mean, so important, these little things. So just more care and attention and a lot of talking. From people, we get to the port and people go, what do you talk about? We're like, oh, can't tell you. Really, really can't tell you. And it was just constant chatter, and really to the point where we were sort of 2 days from the actual finish, and we're going, we've got so much more to talk about. So, I mean, it does make me laugh when men say, oh, I'd love to have been a cook on your boat. And I'm like, no.
And you take us then on to that final leg. Can you just tell us, I guess, what happened as you finished at the end of the race? It's so well documented in the film.
It was just extraordinary. I mean, Howard, naughty man, he said, oh, everyone's gone home because you've taken so long to get in. He said, there's no one here. So all the boats are gone. I'm like, oh, okay. Right, well, our families will be there. We knew there was a boat with our families coming out and our friends and everything. So, okay. And that leg had been so long, we'd run out of food. We'd had to dip into the grab bag, which is your emergency food supply. The last meal we ever ate on Maiden was fried chocolate cake. It was, I can't tell you, absolutely gobby. And then as we were coming up the coast, the ghosting with no wind, trying to get up to the finish, there was a boat came out from Weymouth with a hamper full of hamburgers, but if we can't take outside assistance, otherwise we're disqualified. And they didn't know, and it's like, we won't tell anyone. We're like, no, we'll know. But please take them away. So anyways, by the time we got to the finish, we were ready. Oh, we were ready to finish. And it would just so happen that we finished on a bank holiday Monday. As the dawn, literally as the sun rose, we saw the Needles, and the timing was just perfect. I mean, there was still no blooming wind. Rock and All got stuck on the shingles bank ahead of us, so if we could have overtaken them, that would have been great. But the wind kept shifting, and it started picking up as we went up the Solent, and then this boat came out, and another boat, and we thought, oh, maybe there's a regatta on or something. And they turned around and started coming with us, and then another, and then another. And I mean, especially because Howard said, everyone's gone, it was just so amazing. And we were looking at each other going, oh my God, this is just incredible. As we crossed the finishing line, they'd ordered this special really loud cannon, and we all jumped out of our skins. You can see it on the film. We all sort of jumped like that because it's much louder than we expect. And then all the ship's horns in Southampton blew, and all the boats around us. I mean, I was in bits, absolute bits, and we all were. But it was like someone created that for us, because it was just so perfect. There wasn't one, well, apart from the fact that we didn't come first, there wasn't one single thing wrong with that day. Bruno said it's so funny in the film where he says, we came around the corner and there's, hundreds, thousands of people, but they're not there for us. So, I felt so sorry for them. They came in and everyone was like, yeah, go and park over there. Now, where's Maiden? 50,000 people. Watching the film for the first time is the first time I've seen the angle of them all running to try and get a glimpse of the boat. And chanting Maiden, and what you can't hear in the film is they've got the speakers on in one of the restaurants or cafes, and they're playing Tina Turner, Simply the Best. Which just, I was like, okay, I'm done. That's I'm done.
It's magnificently done in the film, isn't it? We were all in tears in my family watching it, but it is beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of production as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, they've done such an amazing job. I'm aware that film will now become ultimately my memory of the race, but they've done such an amazing job.
And you went on then to be awarded the first woman to win the Yachtsman of the Year. How did the sailing community react to that at the time?
I think favourably. I think it was a bit of shock and awe, really. We had really shocked people into not our way of thinking, but people were changing their minds. And, unfortunately, I don't think that really lasted. But and another thing was, I think people thought, oh, it's this bunch of girls. This bunch of girls can race around the world. We're going, no, all women can do this. Yeah, no, we think it's just you. And there's a sense of that. But no, and I have to. I'm going to make an awful confession. I didn't know what the Yachtsman of the Year trophy was when I was offered it. So, because I'd come from a cruising background, so and this was all, as I say, still pretty new to me. So in New Zealand, when Howard came up to me and said, "Oh, you've won the Yachtsman of the Year trophy, first woman in its 34-year history," I was like, "Wow, that's great, Howard. What's the Yachtsman of the Year trophy?" He says, "Oh, the yachting journalist is really important." So, Peter Knight gave it to me in New Zealand, and it was beamed live to the London Boat Show, which was quite amazing, really.
And what happened after an experience like the one you had on Maiden? Is it tough to say goodbye to their crew, and they've been such a part of your life for so long?
Oh, it's awful. It was just awful. It's such a drop, and of course, 30 years ago, no one was talking about mental health or, how you deal with... so much of what we're talking about in sport now, we could have quite done with that kind of conversation. I mean, we fell off a cliff. The girls dealt with it, I have to say, better than I did, because they all went off to new jobs, racing the next Whitbread or a race or a job or whatever, which was, my responsibility. I stayed around to write the book and to work with Whitbread, did a short film and do the talks and go to yacht clubs and keep the Maiden momentum going. And we sold Maiden the day after we finished, which was awful.
Did you?
Yeah. Oh, it's dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. And the girls went and all the teams left, and it was just became a ghost town. And I got married, which was a huge mistake. We both realised quite soon after that, we got engaged when I was then, and I was a whole different person. And we knew we should have called it off, but the momentum of Hello Magazine and the fairy tale wedding, the end, we just had to go along with it. And we pretty much waited until everyone had gone away, and then we got divorced. It was just not the most sensible or healthy thing that either of us ever did. I mean, it was amicable, which was good. Yeah, so I fell off a cliff really at the end of the race, and I took no care of myself. I didn't ask for help. I basically worked myself into the ground. And it wasn't really until I had a complete breakdown that I realised, that I was living this very unhealthy existence and actually really hadn't taken any time off at all for a number of years. And, it was all just too much. And I had quite an impressive breakdown. And I mean, this is something I would never have talked about even a few years ago, but I think it's important as we talk about mental health, especially in sport, that people see that supposedly strong people are not. We all have that in us. We're all human, and we must always, we must make sure we ask for help. And in the end, wonderful Joe, drove all the way from Wales, 4 hours, middle of the night, found me locked inside my walk-in wardrobe with the phone still, sort of off, like, that, and packed a few belongings, put me in the car and took me down to Wales. And it took me 2 years to get back to any sort of semblance of normal. And I was so lucky I had that to return to my home in Wales. And I had a small holding for a while, and I bred horses, and it was just perfect. And then one day Howard invited me to the Yachtsman of the Year award, and I saw the big catamaran and I went, I want to do that. So we did Royal Sun Alliance, which was the first all-female crew to try the Jules Verne non-stop around the world. We broke 7 world records, some of which still stand. And then I put Maiden 2 together, which was the first ever mixed professional mixed gender racing team. That was 20 years ago. It was the most successful record-breaking team for a number of years. Never been recreated. So, it's hard to work out that one. And then after that, I did a sporting event in Qatar, which was an absolute disaster. They didn't pay us. That's when I had to go and get a real job. And I've spent the last 15 years recovering from that. I had to start from scratch at the age of 43. But 5 years ago, I found my baby. I found Maiden rotting in the Seychelles, and all of the original crew, we all got together and started a crowdfunder, and we bought her. So again, Princess Haya, who is King Hussein's daughter, King Hussein sadly is no longer with us. He's very much missed. She got hold of me and she said, I hear you've rescued Dad's boat. And I went, well, it's my boat actually, but what can I do to help? And she just, she's her father's daughter. She funded the shipping and the restoration and the first part of our world tour, which was amazing. So what are we doing with Maiden? We are obviously not doing anything at the moment because of this awful virus, this dreadful situation that we're all in. But once we restored her, we were like, well, what are we going to do with her? I don't really want to teach sailing. She's too young to be a museum, and and it was a mixture of Princess Haya and my daughter, and this sort of conversation about inspiring girls, empowering women, lap of honour, girls' education. Girls' education. Okay. So we left the UK in November 2018, and on a 3-year world tour, which we got halfway through until in March, of course, we got the same as everyone else. And so what we do is for the first part of the world tour, we were working with 6 partner charities. So we would fundraise for them. We have funded girls' educational programs all over the world, which is amazing, and we just have loved doing. But more than that, we've learned how to raise awareness for girls' education and how to interact with the whole process. And also we've learned what part we can play. We're a tiny cog in all of these amazing women doing all of these extraordinary things, and Maiden plays her part. So when we get going again, hopefully in April next year, we're going to be focusing on much more hands-on, working with communities who enable girls into education and empower and support them to remain in education throughout their teenage years. So in developing countries, it's physically getting the girls into education. In developed countries, especially in places like America and the UK, the dropout rate at the age of 15 for girls is huge. And it's the same with sport. So keeping working with communities, keeping that momentum going is hugely important. And we know what happens when you educate a girl. When you educate a girl, you educate her family, her village, her community. You increase the socioeconomic status of her country that she lives in. People are happier when girls are educated. We could eradicate world poverty. We could eradicate viruses, because once women are educated, they pass on education, and so it's endless. We could solve all the world's problems, basically, if we had equality across the board. And then, of course, once you have equality in education, you would hope we have that in sport, in business, in government. You look at the countries that are successful at dealing with this virus, and look who they're led by, and look at the ones who aren't. I'm not going to go there, but that there. So we feel we're just a tiny part of this hugely important move towards gender equality.
Fantastic, fabulous. And where can people find you and find out more? And
so people can go to our website. It's www.themaidenfactor.org. Not the Maiden Factory, as someone misheard me the other day. The Maiden Factory doesn't work. No, it's not a Maiden Factory. No. It's the Maidenfactor.org. And you can go on there and you can donate. And we have a charity shop We make our logo out of bits of Maiden's hull that we had to remove when we were doing the restoration. We have key rings made out of the rigging.
I bought one of those, lovely, yeah.
Oh, thank you. You did, thank you. So you can go and find out then what we'll be doing. And in November, we hope to put the new schedule up and open applications up again for people to sail on the boat, which we have people sailing on the boat from place to place.
Fantastic. And just finishing, I guess, with talking about the documentary and so on, and looking back at yourself from those, 30 years again now, how did it feel to see yourself on screen, exposed in that way on the big screen, looking back?
This is something weirdly that we all experienced, and it was very unexpected. I couldn't believe how together I was. I mean, I looked at myself thinking, I remember myself as being a bit of a muppet, not really knowing what I was doing. And the first, sort of profound thing that I say, I looked at her and Jenny, I went, I don't remember ever being that profound. She said, I don't remember you ever being that profound either. And we also experienced this sense of, blimey, we're quite impressive at that age. I mean, and I don't remember that at all. I remember us kind of muddling through it, but no, it's the experience. I mean, what a gift, what an amazing gift. The experience of being able to look back in time and to see what we did and how we did it. And for me as well, what was really important was the way that Alex kept it real. It was raw. And for me, it was important because I want girls to look at that and think, well, they didn't look a certain way. It's messy. They didn't really know what they were doing. I can do that, and for me as well, when we sail Maiden into port now, we get girls coming down to the boat. It's not just about fundraising and girls' education. Girls look at this boat and they go, I can do that. I can do that. If she did it, I can do this. And, Maiden shows what a girl can do if just one person believes in her. It's extraordinary what we've got out of the film personally, but also for the project now, because in America, when we were, doing the stops there, we would sail in somewhere and people would be going, oh my God, I just saw the film. Is that her? Like, yes, that is actually, oh my God, this is the actual boat. Look, this is the actual boat. We did the Whitbread. Just wonderful, wonderful stuff. People in tears. Oh, it's just been amazing.
And what piece of advice would you give to that younger self now, looking back with all that you've learned over the years?
Oh, so this is two things. If I was to give advice to a young person now, it would be, I'm stealing this from my mother. I steal a lot of quotes from my mother. I wish I'd listened to her then, I have to say. But she said to me once, there are two certainties in life. If you stand still, absolutely nothing will happen. That's a certainty. If you move forwards and keep moving forwards, even if you don't know which direction you're going in, or you're trying to find your way, or you're uncertain of the path, something will happen. You are opening yourself up to the universe and opportunities. Now you have to grab those opportunities, and you may have to change course, but you're going somewhere. And we know from experience, all of us, if you don't have a job, it's hard to find a job. If you have a job, you have jobs coming out the yin yang. So I think that's a great piece of advice for young people. If I was to give myself a piece of advice at that age, I would say ask for help.
Thanks so much to Tracy for taking the time to talk with me. She's a wonderful and inspiring woman who's achieved so much for gender equality and girls' education. Thanks again to Sport England for their kind support, and also to Sam Walker, the executive producer for the podcast. You can find out more about all 41 of my incredible guests from this and the previous series at fearlesswomen.co.uk, or come and say hello on social media, where you'll find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at Sue Anstis or at The Game Changers. My guest next week is Judy Murray, former international tennis player and coach to many champions, including her sons Jamie and Andy.
And the pictures that were all used in the papers of me during that first Wimbledon were always baring my teeth or pumping my fist. And if I had been a dad doing that, I don't think anybody would have made anything of it, because it's okay to be a driven, ambitious man. Clearly for many people it was something wrong with being competitive woman.
The Game Changers. Fearless women in sport.